What's good? Welcome back to the zone. Today's video is going to be a continuation of the spotlights that we started last week. If you missed that video, we walked through the 76ers and went through a detailed review of all, I would say 80% of the players on that team. And so we're going to do the same for the Pelicans today, which is going to be one of the teams that I will be playing with out of the three. Unlike what I did during the last week, is that I'm only going to focus on the players that have a 70 overall and up. And that is because, as I mentioned in a few videos ago, that I removed the intangibles, or I at least reduced the intangibles all the way down to 25 for each and every player in this league. So because of this, all of the overalls that you see here are not going to be a one-to-one match compared to the overalls that you typically see in 2K, as well as the other videos that exist on YouTube from the other content creators. So that being said, you see Stephen Lee right here. He's an 84. Assuming his intangibles were a 70 or above, he could potentially go up to, let's say, a 87 or even a 90. So as an example, let me just do this right now so you can see it. If I were to come all the way to the right and move his intangibles up, let's max it out just as an example. And so you'll see with the intangibles all the way up, he's an 89 overall, close to 90. But without it, he's an 84. And so that's why I removed or reduced the intangibles for all of the players. And that's why I'm going to highlight those that have a 70 and above, because based on the intangibles, their overall can jump up quite a bit. Now, that being said, let's dive in. So first up, you see we have Stephen Lee, who's a 84 overall. And I was very hyped when we got to Stephen to create him, mainly because the randomizer selected Dennis Rodman, whose build was based off of the 88 to 89 Pistons. And so that build was a glass cleaning lockdown. It had 7 badges overall, and the overall rating was 82. So as you can see, Stephen, his overall is actually higher than that. And the reason for this is because, so from a post hook perspective, his attributes increased. His perimeter defense also increased, as well as his block increased. His shot contest definitely took a hit. He was down by 42 points. And his consistency from an offensive perspective was pretty much the same, and his overall potential was downgraded just by a little bit. So factoring the fact that he had a bunch of boosts from his attribute perspective, as well as the fact that he qualified for 18 badges overall compared to Rodman's number of 7, this is why Stephen has a higher overall rating compared to Dennis Rodman. In addition to this, the randomizer did help him out in that the position is still the same for the most part. So Dennis Rodman's primary position was a power forward. The same thing happened here for Stephen. The only difference is that his secondary position is at the center position, and he's also taller than Dennis Rodman at 6'9". So because of this, Stephen would technically be considered better than Rodman. From what I've seen thus far, his play is, I don't want to say lackluster, but let's keep it a buck. It's lackluster. On the defensive side, he's very helpful, just like Rodman. But from an offensive standpoint, he doesn't even try to take shots, which I guess makes sense because of the DNA that he's built off of. But one would think with the tendency changes that this would have changed, because the majority of the attributes that were changed were augmented to 50 or above. And so I would expect more on the offensive side, but unfortunately, Stephen does not provide that. But nonetheless, I think he can contribute if he's on the right team. Now, next up, we have one of my boys, one of the people that put me on this path to creating this fictional league, and that's Miles Auguste. So as I mentioned in the original, he is one of 3 brothers. He's going to be a point guard, primary, shooting guard, secondary. You'll see that he's 6'5" and he's 195 pounds. He qualifies for 15 badges and his overall is at 82. Probably won't go into too much detail about Miles unless you are actually curious about it, but you'll see that had him coming from UCLA. We have him as a year pro because I already played one year of my league, and then a lot of these things were just randomized. I won't go through the attributes unless you absolutely want to see the attributes, but yeah, This is my guy. So as mentioned in the last video, he's very athletic in that he loves to finish at the rim, or at least I do with Miles. He could shoot, still trying to master his shot from beyond the arc, but from close range to mid range is definitely consistent. And like I said, he can finish. Defensively, he does have some shortcomings in that his perimeter defense is low, and I think his interior defense is low as well. I tried the best I can with it, in addition to his lateral quickness being low, so it does make playing defense with him kind of difficult, which is why he has the 82 overall. But overall, I think from a simulation perspective that I watched thus far, he's been pretty consistent, and he definitely can get buckets if you want to get buckets with him. After Miles, we have Axel Walden. As I mentioned yet again in the previous video, Ax is my guy. I went through hell and back trying to recreate Axel Walden. I was trying to get the face. I was doing all types of crazy things. And then when I got 2K21, it was like I had to redo everything all over again. So as a result, I decided to just change Ax entirely from a visual perspective, just change his face so that it's easier to recreate in the future if I want to. But you'll see that he's 6'8", 205. He still plays the 3 slot as he did in 2K20. The only difference is his overall is an 81, and as I mentioned before, that's tied to me reducing the intangibles. But he has the same number of badges, which I believe are 8. And yeah, when Ax wants to turn things on, he definitely turns things on. I definitely think it's tied to the coaching scheme, because I watched some simulations where he was on like the USA versus World Rising Star game where he didn't do much, but then in All-Star game he turned up. In an actual game against a good team, he turns up. So I think it really depends on the coaching scheme and what team he's on. But for me, when I played with him in my previous My League, it's been very fun. As I mentioned before, the chemistry between him and Zion was off the charts, and even the chemistry with Miles and him when we were playing, all 3 players together seem to always know what to do, and we're always in sync with each other. So I'm curious to see how things will turn out in this league, and if Axel is still going to perform the same way. I surely hope so. Next up, we have Zach Ellis Jr. And so I think he is one of the tallest on the team thus far that I've created. You'll see he has the number 8. He's 7 foot, 242. And oddly enough, he is based off of a 2K base. The original base was a point guard, shooting guard, secondary, 6'2", 169. The attributes that were selected, so we're talking about his post hook, mid-range, block, acceleration, and potential, they were all augmented on top of the base, but his speed did take a hit. Overall, from a defensive standpoint, Zach has your back. He'll get a lot of boards, he'll get some blocks. Offensively, it's hit or miss. Sometimes he could get things done in the paint. He won't really try to shoot, despite having boost to his jump shooting tendencies based off the randomizer. But overall, from a simulation perspective, because I will say this, gameplay versus sim, 2 different ball games. So from a sim perspective, he's going to get his stats up from what I've seen thus far in the test runs that I've done thus far. But I have not played with this team just yet, so I'll be learning about the team as you guys are learning about it once I start playing. But overall, from what I've seen from a sim perspective, he's been cool. And so Zach is 19, so I expect to see him on some type of rookie list. I would say between rookie 2nd team or rookie 3rd team. If he makes it to the 1st team, that'll be a pleasant surprise. But nonetheless, that's Zach. So Mike Manis, he makes up the 2nd out of the Twin Towers. You'll see that he is 7'3" and 234 pounds. Now, he, like Zach, is based off of a 2K base, but the randomizer did not have such a good impact on him compared to Zach's. Now, unfortunately, I didn't capture what his previous position was before started making modifications, but from an attribute perspective, His post fade was decreased, pass IQ, pass vision, so pretty much his playmaking and finishing attributes that were selected were downgraded. His perimeter defense was, I believe, augmented a little bit, as well as his stamina, and his potential is an overall 80. From what I've seen thus far, considering that he is literally the same age as Zach, same position essentially, the only difference between the two is Zach has a secondary position of a center, whereas Mike is a pure power forward. Despite his height, people could get around him very easily and score some buckets if need be. And from an offensive standpoint, he hasn't been as impactful from what I've seen just watching the CPU play with him. I'd be curious to see, like with Zach, how it plays when I'm actually playing on the team and trying to run some plays and get things done. But overall, he has an overall of, I believe, a 73. Not too bad, but not too great. I've seen some other players with the same overall do more, but only time will tell and see how he develops. Now, when it comes to Lester Fuller, Michael Kent, Henry Fisher, these three players were part of the original draft class that I used in my previous My League. So specifically speaking, Lester, he went 29th overall in the previous My League that I had, and you'll see that he's a shooting guard, point guard, 6'4", 8-20, and his overall is a 73. He only qualified for one badge, and when I say qualified, 2K only assigned him one badge. From what I've seen, he's okay. He could definitely dribble and do some playmaking, but he doesn't take shots as much as I'd like, considering his position. So, especially since he probably is coming off the bench. Let me just double check that. No, actually, he's starting. So, considering that he's starting at the 2, I would think that he would be more impactful by taking more shots and contributing. From what I've seen the CPU do, he doesn't do that. But like the others, we'll see how things go when we play this in the regular season. Now, as for Michael, he was also drafted, but he was drafted as the 47th pick. And so you'll see that he has the same name as another player that's in the league, Stefano Kent, but there's no relation between the two. And so Mike himself, I believe he is, let's just find out how old he is. It's not here. Mike is 19, and 2K assigned him some reddish hair color. So I was like, when I modeled his face, I did make some changes because it looked crazy, but I wanted to keep the hair color in the face, facial hair. So I just changed him to resemble like DJ Red Alert. So I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he's red haired, light skinned. So I figured I'd go for the same kind of motif. I didn't model the face after it, just made so that his hair, eyebrows, and goatee were red. And so from what I've seen from Mike, isn't much, or I should say Michael, not to confuse him with Mike Manis. He runs at the 3. I haven't seen him play that often, so be curious to see how he develops. But considering that he was so low in the draft, I'm not expecting much, especially since his rating is a 71. But he could surprise me. There are people that are 68s that surprise me in this league, so we'll see. Henry Fisher, I know nothing about. And to keep it a being with you, he was a player that did not go drafted in my previous My League, but he was assigned based off of that randomizer approach that I told you all, because I didn't want to waste these players. And so you'll see that he's 6'8", 234. He plays at the 3 as well as the 4 for a secondary position. His overall rating is a 70, and he has no badges whatsoever. Or I should say one badge compared to the other 2. And so as a result, not entirely sure where things will go with Henry, but we'll see. Next up, we have Derek Gadson. And so I think I I fumbled it earlier when I said that. I think I said that Lester is starting off in the rotation. And no, I was right. Lester's starting in the rotation, and then we have Derek coming off the bench as the ninth man for the team at the shooting guard position. But Derek didn't exist until recently, mainly because of what I was saying before as far as what happened with teams signing 2K players that I didn't create. And so I created him as the 15th person on this team, and he actually became the 9th best person on the team. And so I think Derek himself, he is based off of a 2K base. The base itself was a small forward shooting guard, and so his position is actually reversed, where the shooting guard is the primary and the small forward is the secondary. That base was a 70 overall, tempo pushing wing. It was 6'7" and 205, and you'll see that Derek is a little bit smaller in height as well as weight, but the randomizer did lace him from a shooting perspective, so his mid-range shot got improved drastically, is at a 98, and his free throw got bumped up to a 73. Now granted, that's not terrible, but under the right conditions you could make shots with that. Defensively, he took a hit from a steal perspective, but his offensive rebound got bumped up to a 98 and a shot contest up to an 82. So being that I just created him, I have not watched him play a single game. Like the others, curious to see how things pan out with Derek. Maybe he'll be good, maybe he won't, considering that he has a low overall, and his potential I think is a 74, so we'll see. And that will do it. So if you made it this far in the video, please leave a like and subscribe so you can keep up to date with the other videos that are coming out related to this My League. As I mentioned before, this is the first out of the 3 teams that I will be playing with in this My League. We also have the Mavericks as well as the Lakers. I don't know if I'll be recording those next, but stay on the lookout for those as well as the other spotlights that will be coming out in a few weeks. We got a month left and the season is slated to start. I'm actually looking forward to that, so hopefully you are too. And I'll see you next time.